Oh shoot, did you just make it in here from another universe? Perhaps you interfered with a canon event and now you're on the run. Don't worry, we've got a full breakdown of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse to teach you the ins and outs of multiversal travel, and the obvious pitfalls, or should I say spots, to avoid. We'll take a look at the many plotlines, Easter eggs, cameos, and more as we figure out exactly where Miles is and what he should be doing about his predicament. Things are gonna get weird, and beyond that, pretty spoilery, so take this as your warning. If you don't already know what you're in for, you might want to get your butt down to a theater before it's too late to see it on a big screen. Trust me, you'll want to see it on a big screen.
Welcome to ChannelFrederator, the cartoon central of the internet. Before we begin, we publish new videos every week, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video.
Get ready, we're about to swing in. Of course, the movie's gonna start with some logos, but these logos are special. The Sony and Marvel crests, along with those belonging to the rest of the production companies, are looking pretty glitchy, showcasing comic book styles from across the many universes we'll be visiting over the next 2.5 hours. Old school TV shows, comics that our favorite characters debuted in, black and white styles, every imaginable era gets a quick shout out. There have been so many different Spideys over the years. Then there's a quick shout out to the Comics Code Authority with their seal on prominent display. Now defunct, the CCA once offered their seal of approval to comics that wanted to be seen as legitimate and safe to read. It's funny to look back on this organization that essentially acted as a voluntary censor for comics, especially with the kind of content that gets put into comics today, but the CCA did play a major role in comics publishing from the 50s to the early 2000s. Did anyone expect a quick comics history lesson? Hopefully you did. And with those opening logos and animations out of the way, we're thrust into a very interesting story involving the history of a fan favorite character, Gwen's story. You probably expected us to kick off with the next chapter in Miles Morales' story, you know, because that's what the first movie was all about and he's sort of the big centerpiece of Across the Spider-Verse's advertising campaign. But, as Gwen says, let's do things differently this time. So differently. Set to a drum beat provided by Spider-Woman, we get a quick reintroduction into the world of superheroes. Gwen is pretty bummed that she and Miles were separated after they saved the multiverse last time, and she's also dealing with some trauma directly related to her own universe. Namely, her cop dad wants her alter ego behind bars, and her bestie turned into a lizard and accidentally got smushed during an altercation with Spider-Woman. Her band doesn't really love her self-pity and refusal to communicate what she's feeling, so she quits. You might have noticed that Gwen's universe looks a little different than the others. It's awash in pastel colors akin to the style of comic book artist Robbie Rodriguez. Keep an eye on style changes when we switch between universes, although I probably don't have to tell you that. After a quick chat with her dad, they hug it out, but Papa gets an update on some strange activity at the Guggenheim and rushes out. Gwen naturally dons her Spider-Woman costume and swings her way down to the art museum. She's wearing ballet flats, just keep that in mind for now, alright? There, she meets an Italian Renaissance version of the Vulture, complete with Da Vinci-esque weapons and contraptions. He's obviously out of place, all parchment paper and quill ink in a world of soft pinks and blues. Gwen starts to scrap with the displaced supervillain who really doesn't seem to get modern art. This leads to a Jeff Koons balloon dog joke that made me chuckle. Did you chuckle too? Italian Renaissance Vulture gets the upper hand, or is it the upper claw, on Gwen, and is about to deliver a brutal blow when Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, aka Blue Panther, aka Dark Garfield, shows up, accompanied by his iconic sound effect and his AI assistant Lila. He joins the fight with some tech that is definitely from the future and still can't manage to pin down the winged villain. He also lets Gwen know that she and Miles definitely messed with the multiverse and have made a lot of tears for him to clean up. Kinda like that nerd from Earth 199,999. Vulture causes more chaos, resulting in Miguel calling for backup, which turns out to be Jess Drew, another version of Spider-Woman. This version just so happens to ride a wicked motorcycle and is pregnant. Gwen is impressed, to say the least. The 3-on-1 fight begins, and it starts to look like Italian Renaissance Vulture is going down, but not without a Hail Mary. He blasts through the skylight, takes down a helicopter, and gets caught by Miguel. The trio of spider people have to think quick to stop the falling helicopter from generating even more collateral damage, and everything turns out pretty well. Well, in terms of the public safety. Gwen, on the other hand, gets found by her father, who really wants to arrest Spider-Woman. He thinks that she killed this universe's Peter Parker and also has a gun pointed at her. Gwen takes off her mask, thinking that proving Spider-Woman is his daughter will make him give up, but he does not. Miguel and Jess snag Pops in a futuristic trap to get Gwen out of this pickle and get set to head back to home base with the anomalous Vulture. Seeing that Gwen is in trouble, Jess tries to convince Miguel to let the hooded Spider-Woman join their crew, which he reluctantly accepts. Gwen joins the Spider Society and is off to wherever they're headed. Which brings us to the next part of our story, Mr. Miles Morales. Miles' story. Welcome back to Brooklyn, folks. Here, Miles is doing what he can to keep up with his friendly neighborhood Spider-Man duties while trying to adjust to life without his multiversal friends, specifically Gwen. Add in the pressures of being a high-performance high school student with pushy parents and you've got a recipe for hero fatigue. This is a young lad who's having trouble balancing his responsibilities and doesn't quite know what he wants to be. Running late to an appointment with what I can only assume is a fancy school's version of a guidance counselor, Miles stops in for a quick bodega patty. It's here that he first encounters the Spot. This Dalmatian, cow-looking dude can generate dark portals all over his body thanks to the big Alchemax Collider explosion that happened in the first movie. His whole body got changed, he lost his friends and family, and his life was ruined. Thus, he's using his portals, or spots, to rob convenience store ATMs. Running into Spider-Man gave him new purpose though, as being called a villain of the week by our titular hero gave him an inferiority complex strong enough to thrust him into supervillainy. He feels as if he gave Spidey his powers by bringing in a radioactive spider from another universe, and as such Spider-Man owes him something. Sometimes all you need is a quick kick in the pants to figure out what it is that you want to do. Speaking of, after Miles made a quick appearance at the guidance meeting, he had to dash off and take care of the Spot once more. Miles' dad, soon-to-be police Captain Morales, joins the chase, which takes them all to the place where the Alchemax Collider blew up. The Spot gets mad, like scary mad, but ends up kicking his own butt into another universe. And I'm not exaggerating, that is literally what happens here. With the villain suddenly out of the picture, Spider-Man and Papa Morales get a chance to shoot the breeze. Miles sorta gets through to his dad about letting him spread his wings, so to speak, and then runs off before he accidentally lets it slip that he's actually his son. All this action puts Miles a little behind schedule, and he's gotta pick up some cakes for his dad's promotion celebration. He asks the cake maker to add a few more words than a cake can handle and gets caught up in some petty crime fighting on his way to the soiree. The end result of these misadventures is arriving at the party after his dad gave a heartwarming speech, and the cake spelling out something you probably don't want to see on a day of celebration. Miles obviously can't tell his parents that he's Spider-Man, so he doesn't explain himself and gets grounded. Bummer. So Miles gets grounded, but you know who didn't get grounded? Spider-Man. So when Gwen shows up sporting a cool new multiverse traveling watch, he decides he can most definitely slip out. Miles and Gwen, together again. The duo swings through the city, pulling stunts and combos rife with references to the previous flick. Gwen gives Miles the lowdown on the Spider Society, mentions some choice names, and even plants a sneaky little 2099 bug to track down the Spot. Miles and Gwen make their way to the top of the Williamsburg Bank building and have some deep talks. Like life-altering teenage angst deep. They both feel like they're totally alone with nobody else to connect with. Being a superhero takes a toll, and knowing that an infinite number of other people just like you are just out of reach can't feel too nice. This heartfelt reunion is enough to get both of these Spideys back to Captain Morales' rooftop party for some food and refreshments. While munching and chatting more, Miles' parents come over to introduce themselves, which goes not so swimmingly. Duty calls, and Gwen's gotta rush off to see what the Spot is up to, leaving Miles to chat with his mom. Growing pains are real for both parents and their children, and Miles and his mother come to a better understanding. He doesn't quite tell her that he's Spider-Man, but he comes close. She relents on the hardcore grounding and sends him off after Gwen. W Mom. Now Miles knows that Gwen can't just up and let him join the Spider Society. She made that abundantly clear as they munched on rooftop party foods. But he still wants to see what the heck is up with this secret organization of web-slingers, so he goes invisible and sneaks about as she freaks out. The Spot was here and Gwen missed him, evidenced by all of these gosh darn holes in the walls. Lila generates an incredibly accurate recreation of the Spot's science experiment, showing that he's A, gotten away, and B, become a whole lot stronger. Whoops. A hologram of Jess Zoom calls Gwen and discovers that her protege has goofed up by going to meet an old friend. Not good. Still, everyone deserves a second chance, and when the Spot is tracked down by Lila, Jess tasks Gwen with teaming up with another universe's Spider-Man to catch him. No more mistakes. Miles has main character syndrome, so he decides that he better go and help after being explicitly told not to. So using his invisibility powers to get right up in Gwen's grill, he follows her through the portal to Earth 50101. He pops out the other side in Mumbattan, the stomping grounds of Pavitr Prabhakar, aka Spider-Man India. Gwen and Pav are already fighting the spot, so Miles steps in to help. He's not quite as welcome as he'd originally hoped. Still, Pav is a gracious host, so he introduces Miles to his world and takes him on a tour of his backstory. Must be nice to live such an uncomplicated life, eh? Well, just you wait. After getting absolutely grilled for saying chai tea, which, to be honest, is fair, Miles gets noticed by the spot. However, our black and white villain isn't so interested in scrapping with an out-of-universe Spider-Man at the moment. He's got bigger plans. He's heading to this universe's Alchemax for more of that sweet, sweet collider power. The Spot uses his newly developed confidence with his portal powers to fly up ahead of the Spider Trio to the laboratory. He activates the safety barrier that keeps outsiders from being affected by the collider, which prevents any web-slinging interference, and gets the party started. That is the exact opposite of what the Spider Society wants, so Gwen and Pav do their darndest to breach the barrier. Miles almost gets through using his newly developed electric powers, but is absolutely upstaged by Hobie Brown, aka Spider-Punk. This guitar-slinging anti-fascist loose cannon of a superhero, actually, don't call him a hero, blasts through the barrier like it's nothing and joins the mayhem. Also, check out Gwen's shoes. Traded in those ballet flats for checks, eh? Seems like a little bit of visual character development if you ask me. For a second it seems like the Now Quartet might actually stop the Spot, but no, they do not. He absorbs all that good stuff from the collider and gives Miles a terrifying glimpse of what's to come. Oh man, does he make it spooky. Looks like Miles' dad is in for a real bad time. Then he disappears, leaving the lab in really bad shape. So bad, in fact, that it starts to collapse. For whatever reason, the architects at Alchemax decided to build their enormous science lab in the most precarious spot possible. This building is straight up ready to fall on hundreds of people just hanging out below. Thankfully, there are 4 spider people ready to save the day. Miles, Gwen, Pav, and Hobie all jump into action, snatching civilians from the jaws of death and blasting bits of falling debris. Pav gets distracted by his girlfriend on a bus about to enter freefall, and as he's hauling it back up onto a bridge, he also spots his girlfriend's dad, a police captain, attempting to save a child from the wreckage. He tries to rescue both, but can't quite muster the strength. Miles, on the other hand, has no problem swinging in and rescuing the captain and the kid. Gwen tries to stop him from heading down, but Miles knows he can do it. I wonder if this will have any sort of long-lasting effect. The day is saved and everyone is happy. Pav doesn't experience any kind of harrowing loss, and Miles feels like he's back on top. Too bad he inadvertently tore a big-ass hole in this universe by saving that dude. Damn. Who could have known? Well, actually, a few people could, but we'll get to that soon. Choice members of the Spider Society show up to contain the destabilization caused by Miles, and Jess admonishes Gwen for goofing up yet again. As the responsible adult Spider folks start to clean up the mess, Miles, Gwen, and Hobie are sent to the Spider Society HQ to meet up with Miguel. The fact that this is a bad thing is totally lost on Miles, but hey, we love an optimist. Excited is an understatement when Brooklyn's friendly neighborhood Spider-Man shows up in Nueva York. He's so stoked to see all these other versions of himself, he barely even seems to register that he's in trouble with the very organization he so desperately wants to join. The whole time that he's walking to the war room, Gwen and Hobie are trying to dissuade him from jumping in headfirst, but Miles is really good at jumping headfirst. Along the way, they meet all sorts of different spider people. Like, some counts are showing that there are like over 200 different Spideys included, maybe more. I don't have the processing power in my brain to register even half of what was going on in that theater, so you're gonna have to take my word for it. Some quick ones include the Insomniac video game versions of Spider-Man, Spider-Cop, Spider-Cowboy and his Spider-Horse, and Malala Windsor, aka Spider-UK. So many spider people, so little time. The main crew makes to Miguel's mind palace or whatever, and he takes his sweet, dramatic time descending down to their level. Miles tries to be friendly and introduces himself, but Spider-Man 2099 wants nothing to do with him. He just radiates pure malice towards this 15-year-old. This will continue until morale increases. Peter B. Parker shows up in a pink bathrobe for moral support with a brand new addition to the Parker family, Baby Mayday. Adorable and sweet. He steals the scene for a bit, doting on his daughter, showing off pictures even though she's right there, and generally being the kind of dad that gets on everyone's nerves despite being a really good guy. Look, we get it. You love your kid. Now can we please talk about literally anything else? With Peter B. Parker doing just enough to really annoy Miguel, Spider-Man 2099 launches into some multiversal exposition in order to explain to Miles exactly what he's done wrong. By saving Pav's girlfriend's police captain dad, he has averted what is known as a canon event. These events are what make spider people who they are and must introduce a specific kind of tragedy to their lives in order to steal their resolve and teach them about responsibility. Every Spider-Man experiences an event that tears their specific Uncle Ben away from them, and if this doesn't happen, their universe can unravel. If enough universes unravel thanks to this kind of interference, the whole Spider-Verse could be at risk. Miguel also explains that he has knowledge about this firsthand, as he attempted to replace a different version of himself that was allowed to have a happy family. He lived a wonderful life for a time, but the universe collapsed around him, with his daughter literally disappearing from his arms. That's rough, buddy. Those with extensive spider knowledge might recognize some other classic Uncle Ben moments playing out in the background. We can see Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man realizing that Captain Stacy ain't gonna make it. There are other, more animated canon events playing out in little holograms all across the room. Needless to say, Miguel takes multiversal anomalies very seriously, and is none too happy that Miles has caused one by showing up unannounced. The revelation of canon events opens Miles' eyes to the very real possibility that Uncle Aaron's death in the previous movie probably wasn't enough. His soon-to-be police captain dad is most definitely in danger of being killed by the Spot. Miguel and the rest of the Spider Society see this as inevitable and necessary. Captain Morales must die in order to keep the rest of their universes intact. Miles, on the other hand, is a teenage boy who loves his family and tends to pull off heroic stunts as often as possible. It's not gonna take that lying down. Miguel figured as much and attempts to trap Miles in place in order to prevent him from getting back home to stop the Spot. But Hobie's barrier-breaking advice from earlier, along with his anti-establishment views, helps Miles burst out of the futuristic enclosure using his electric powers. Shocking. Hobie pieces out and tosses his portal watch away, and Miles goes for a light jog. Every single Spider variant is put on high alert by Miguel, who tells him to capture Spider-Man. Of course, such vague instructions leads to massive confusion, and the largest pointing meme ever put to film. Or I guess this movie's mostly digital, so put to pixels? I don't know. Regardless, this is pure gold. Miles takes advantage of this confusion for a moment and even hides behind the back of another Spider-Man. It almost works, but Miguel shows up and sets his minions on the right path. Dang, he could have got away with it too if it weren't for that meddling future spider vampire. This kicks off an unbelievably wild chase sequence with more references, Easter eggs, and spider variants than you could shake a stick at. Let's name a few standouts here. Armored Spider-Man tackles Miles near the start of the chase. Otto Octavius as the superior Spider-Man lets loose. Mangaverse Spider-Man makes an appearance. Spider-Cat coughs up a web ball onto Miles' face. Spider-Rex gets some of the punniest onomatopoeia possible with T-Whip. The bombastic Bagman tries and fails to make a difference. And even Metro Boomin's Spider-Sona tells Miles that there's nowhere to run. There was, in fact, somewhere to run. Also, in case you didn't know, Metro Boomin was behind Across the Spider-Verse's soundtrack. Nice. The gigantic chase scene continues with Miles making narrow escape after narrow escape, and all of these spider people don't seem to care all that much about the chaos they're causing for the citizens of Nueva York. A lot of cars get crashed, and nobody seems to take note of this. So much for superheroes being paragons of good and righteousness. Miles finds a way into a weird gear-filled tower, and Peter B. Parker catches up to him. He just wants to talk though, he's not like those other spider people. Peter B gives an impassioned speech about how special Miles is and how much he's impacted his life. Hell, Miles gave Peter B the strength to go back to Mary Jane and have a kid. Way to go, Miles. But even with all this dewy-eyed, heartwarming stuff, the other Spideys catch up. The chase continues onto a futuristic freeway and then what appears to be a rocket ship train, and Miles gets pinned down by Miguel. Some very hefty truth bombs are dropped. The most impactful being that Miles shouldn't have been Spider-Man at all. He is the original anomaly, as the spider that gave him superpowers came from a different universe, Universe 42. This left the other world without a Spider-Man and seems to have goofed a whole bunch of stuff up. No wonder Miguel seems to have an extremely personal vendetta against Miles. He is the physical embodiment of everything he wants to prevent. This all sort of sounds like what his family, the weird guidance counselor, and the Spot have all been telling Miles though. That his story has to go a certain way, that he has to accept a specific version of himself, that he's stuck as he is. Miles has had enough of this. Leap of faith time. He makes his way back to the lab where the Spideys send anomalies to their home universes and starts sneaking around all invisible-like. For a moment, he slips past Margot Kess, aka Spider-Bite, and gets himself all rigged up to head home. The thing is, the machine reads him as being from Universe 42, you know, the one without a Spider-Man. Nobody else seems to register this fact though, and Miles starts the sequence. Miguel and the rest of the spider people with plotlines show up and try to stop Miles, but everybody but 2099 realizes that Miles should be able to try and save his dad. So Miles completes his transportation back to his so-called home dimension, leaving everyone in the Spider Society to figure out what's happening next. Gwen is shipped home because technically all of this is her fault, and she sullenly skulks back into her pastel-colored bedroom. However, her dad is waiting for her with a cute little penguin in his hand. Turns out he had some time to reflect on his actions after his daughter felt so betrayed by him that she literally left the universe, and now he's not going to be a cop anymore. This has immediate positive effects for Gwen, as her father is no longer leading a citywide manhunt for her, but it also means that Captain Stacy isn't going to get killed in her canon event. Big win for Spider-Woman. With a newly trusting father figure, she's ready to take on the crappy spider parents from another world. And wouldn't you know it, Hobie stopped by with a bootleg multiverse watch and left it with her dad. Armed with this new technology, Gwen resolves to help Miles save his dad. Now back to Miles. He's flying through the multiverse and gets coughed out atop a pretty raunchy looking rooftop. It does seem to be in Brooklyn, but there are a lot more apartment fires than he remembers. In fact, this kinda looks like if Gotham City made the cross into the Marvel multiverse. No Batman in sight though, that's a different big budget multiversal blockbuster in theaters right now. Still unaware that he's in the wrong place, Miles skitters his way home, sneaking through his bedroom window and onto the floor. His mom comes in with a load of laundry and notices that his hair isn't what she expected. She asks why he's acting so weird, and in a moment of trust and bravery, Miles admits that he is Spider-Man. But we're in Universe 42, so this means nothing to his mom. Kinda like telling your mom that you're the Hokage or that you're Scarlet Witch. That's nice, honey, as long as you don't make me pay for your cosplay supplies. Uncle Aaron shows up with some dirty money to help the Morales family's ends meet, who's also taken aback by Miles' new do. Still, there's work to be done. Sketchy sounding work that Miles has to pretend he's already aware of. They make their way up to the roof, and a mural that depicted Aaron in Miles' universe now memorializes Captain Jeff Morales. Talk about a canon event. Oh, also Miles gets knocked out by the Prowler. The Spider Society is looking for Miles in his home universe, still somehow unaware that he got sent to the wrong one, and Gwen also shows up to support him. Too bad nobody checked Universe 42. Feeling bad for the Morales family, she walks out of Miles' bedroom and speaks with his parents. They're naturally super confused and angry, but Gwen promises to bring Miles home, wherever he is. Jess listens in on this conversation. Back to Universe 42, Miles is tied to a punching bag in Aaron's garage. In Miles' mind, Uncle Aaron became the Prowler in this universe too, but this Aaron is just a sidekick. The real Prowler slinks out of the shadows, grabs his glove, and reveals his face. Yep, that's Universe 42's Miles Morales rocking braids. Things aren't looking too good for our Miles, but he seems to have an escape plan. Meanwhile, Gwen's back in the narrator chair, bringing the whole movie full circle. She's started assembling a squad of different spider people to rescue Miles and defy Miguel's Spider Society. On this elite team, she's drafted Peter B. Parker, Mayday, Pav, Hobie, Margot, Spider-Man Noir, Penny Parker, and Spider-Ham. Not a bad team for an expansion draft. Here's hoping Nick Cage gets some more speaking lines in Beyond the Spider-Verse. And don't forget the Spot. He was last seen making his way to Universe 1610 to kill Miles' family and get revenge for that collider explosion. And the bagel thing. To be continued. Revelations and explanations. Wow. A lot of stuff happened here, so much of it just sort of being set up for the next movie. Like, it was awesome, don't get me wrong, but the real action starts here. Miles is going to face off against a version of himself that turned to crime instead of heroism. The Spot is going to use his newly powered up portals to wreck everything. Miguel and Jess are going to lead the Spider Society on a multiversal manhunt, and Gwen's squad is ready to clash with pretty much everyone mentioned above in order to save Miles. That being said, let's break down some of the bigger events to gain a better understanding. First and foremost, Miles is the original anomaly. That was a real jaw-dropper. Because the spider that bit him, giving him his superpowers, was from a different universe, he technically shouldn't be Spider-Man at all. Universe 1610's Peter Parker did exist, he fought crime, and then he died. And that technically should have been the end of that story. But Alchemax had different plans and birthed both a superhero in Miles and a supervillain in the Spot thanks to their Collider program. So that whole time that Miguel was reluctant to let Gwen into Spider Society, and the fact that he will likely never accept Miles and never planned to, he was doing it because he saw Miles as a potential collapse hazard. Which he was technically correct about, as Miles' interference almost cost them Earth 50101. This multiversal goof-up brought Miles back to the world where there was no Spider-Man as well. The lovingly named Go Home machine picked up on the source of the radioactive spider, not Miles, and sent his superpowers back to where they came from. They brought Miles along with them, of course. Now he's trapped in Universe 42 until someone with multiversal capabilities shows up to give him a hand, which could be quite tricky under these circumstances. It's possible that he shows the Spider-Man-less world what it's like to have a hero, but they could also be too jaded to accept any form of help. His interactions with the braided Miles will probably define his journey. The revelation that Miles is an anomaly also throws some shade at Miguel's view of canon events. Like, if Miles has been living his anomalous life this whole time without any real problems arising, how bad could a canon miss be? Plus, that spider from 42 is still hanging around, and the Spot even found it and kept it on a plaque. Also, if the Spot caused the canon event in 50101, did that not also cause a deviation from whatever story was supposed to be happening? Did Miles preventing that event undo the Spot's meddling, or did it just pile on? Maybe Miguel is overlooking some sort of extra variable that impacts universal stability, or perhaps he's just lying because Miles threatens him. Hurts my brain a little bit, but I suppose it'll all be revealed next March. Fire some of your theories down in the comments. In addition to Miles kind of flying in the face of Miguel's theories, Gwen discovers something too. By inadvertently convincing her father to give up his badge and gun, she technically averted her own canon event. Like, if he's not a police captain, he's not going to be in a situation to die while rescuing a little girl. Therefore, no Spider-Woman police captain tragedy. This also gives her the strength to get back up and collect some other Spider people from across multiple universes. Is this strictly a Miles rescue operation, or does she now believe that Miguel is dangerously full of crap, and they need to get as many people as possible to fight against the Spider Society regime? Hobie seems to have figured this out a while ago, but he's also anti-everything, so who knows? Now let's talk about our big villain who didn't get nearly enough screen time in this one, the Spot. He started out as, to borrow Miles' vernacular, a villain of the week. Not exactly a sparkling title, but he decides to do everything in his power to get some respect, and respect he gets. Holy smokes, this is another instance of this movie pretty much just setting something up for a big payoff in Beyond the Spider-Verse, but geez, he's going to be so overpowered in this next part. He's gonna cause Miles some big problems, and most of all, he's opening doors between universes in a way that nobody else can. Like, in the sequence where he realizes the true power of his spots, he peeks into a whole bunch of different Spider-Verses, proving that he's got the power to be pretty much wherever he wants, whenever he wants. He finds a Lego-verse, meets Miss Chen from the Venom series, pops his head into some old school comics, and more. And of course, whenever he finds an Alchemax variant, he slurps down that collider sauce and powers up. He's gonna make some moves, and they're not gonna be too good for the Spider-Verse at large. We did get to see a little bit of this in a black and white animated bit when Miles got to see their shared future together. And of course, we get a few more hints at a blossoming romance between Miles and Gwen. Neither could quite shake the memory of their friend when they were living in separate universes, with Miles constantly drawing Gwen and Gwen seeing Miles' face wherever she looked. Then Gwen skirted her Spider Society duties to visit with Miles. This ended up with some very deep talks atop, or I guess technically underneath, the Williamsburg Bank building. Could they hold hands? Ah, darn, they're awkward teens. There are more hints of this when Miles' parents get involved, and of course, Pav loudly points out the tension between the two as they fight the Spot in Mumbattan. Will Miles and Gwen end up together? How will they navigate their multiversal relationship? Boy oh boy, it's gonna be good. Easter eggs. This movie is stuffed to the gills with Easter eggs. I've already mentioned a bunch during the video, but why not keep the good times going? Now, what I'll say first of all is that there's no post-credits scene, right? When was the last time a Marvel movie left that out? But I guess it makes sense, considering that the next installment is hitting theaters in less than a year. To be continued is all you need to know about what's coming next, and adding some post-credits sting would just sort of be a slap in the face. Right, on to the Easter egg hunt. This won't be exhaustive until the Blu-ray comes out and I can watch it at 10% speed, but I'll do my best to point out some fun ones. Fan favorite multiverse constant J. Jonah Jameson makes a bunch of appearances across many universes. But you know what's interesting about him? He's always voiced by J.K. Simmons. Most Spider variants end up with different backstories, secret identities, and actors, but JJJ is always a newsman and is always played by the gruffest guy around. Fun. Miles' roommate Genki, pictured wearing Miles' Jordans, claims to be writing an essay, but is actually playing video games. All a part of his process, right? Well, the game he's playing looks to be a Spider-Man game. At first, I thought it was the first Insomniac Spider-Man, but it turns out that he's got his hands on Spider-Man 2 before release. Lucky guy. That's a fun way to advertise your upcoming game, eh? Quick shout out to Hammerspace during the Italian Renaissance Vulture fight. Love me some Hammerspace. Can't wait to see more from Peter Porker in the next flick. The Spot shouts out his villain predecessor by claiming he's got the power of the multiverse in the palm of his hand. Paying homage to Doc Ock is always a good time. Jumping to a live-action cameo in this animated feature, Donald Glover has a brief appearance in the Spider Society holding cells. He's been all over the Spider-Man franchise for years. Back when he was a regular cast member on the Dan Harmon Show Community, folks were campaigning to get him to play some version of Spider-Man, and of course his character wore some Spidey-style PJs which just got the rumor mill churning. He voiced Spider-Man in one animated show and then showed up for a cameo in Spider-Man Homecoming, where Tom Holland's Peter Parker does a pretty bad job interrogating him while searching for some weapons. This time around, he's in full Prowler attire, seemingly picked up for being a multiversal anomaly. And speaking of anomalies, the Spider Society has a whole bunch of them under lock and key. Moose-Stereo, Mysterio, a regular rhinoceros, grizzly, video man, typeface, you name it. So many goofy villains, so little time. There's also a whole lot of billboards with great sight gags and Marvel-themed puns throughout, so keep your eye on the skies for some good chuckles during your next watch. Like, so many little details that you definitely missed on your first watch through. Mayday Parker has some particularly villainous plushies in her crib, which I'm sure she snuggles into submission whenever crimes are committed. And bringing it back to the Guggenheim, as the helicopter drops and is snagged by a complicated weave of webs, somebody observes out loud, I think it's a Banksy. That exact line was uttered in the first movie too, when some glitches were prominently displayed on the side of the street. Both times this line was delivered by Post Malone. And how about that? We made it all the way through, hitting all the major plot points, discussing the implications of said plot points, and pointing out some of the more interesting Easter eggs along the way. All in a day's work. At this point, we just have to wait for Beyond the Spider-Verse to hit theaters next March. Either that or see this one a few more times and try to figure out even more. I'll leave it at that.
Did you enjoy our video? Let us know in the comments down below. And while you're there, like and subscribe to see more great videos every week. And remember, Frederator loves you.